Emma had always enjoyed long drives, especially when she needed space to think. That morning, she left her small apartment before sunrise, hoping the quiet roads would help clear her mind. She checked the weather forecast twice, and everything seemed fine. The skies were clear. The air felt cold but calm, and there was no warning of the trouble waiting ahead. She packed a small bag, filled her car with fuel, and started her trip toward the countryside. It was supposed to be a simple journey, just a few hours of open road and peaceful silence. As the hours passed, the land around her changed slowly. The busy town roads became empty stretches of farmland. Distant hills covered with winter frost lined the horizon. Emma rolled down the window a little, letting the cold but fresh air touch her face. She felt lighter for the first time in weeks, as if the stress she had been carrying was slowly melting away. She had been struggling with many things in her life: loneliness, work pressure, and the feeling that she wasn't truly moving forward. This trip was her way of giving herself a break, a small escape. But halfway through her journey, the weather changed without warning. Thick gray clouds appeared from nowhere, gathering across the sky in heavy layers. The wind picked up, shaking the trees along the road. Emma frowned as she noticed the first snowflakes hitting her windshield. At first, it seemed harmless, just a light snowfall. She turned on her wipers, slowed her speed, and told herself she would be fine. But within minutes, the light snowfall turned into a strong storm. The sky darkened so quickly that it looked like evening had arrived early. The snow fell harder, covering the road in a white layer that hid the edges. Emma tightened her grip on the steering wheel as her car began to slip slightly on the icy path. The strong wind pushed against her vehicle, making her heart race. She tried to stay calm, reminding herself to drive slowly and stay focused. But the storm grew stronger, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Her breath quickened as she leaned forward, trying to see the road through the heavy snowfall. The world outside was turning into a blur of white. Her car tires skidded again, and this time the movement was sharper. She gasped and pressed the brakes gently, fighting the fear rising in her chest. She looked around desperately, searching for any sign of a house, a shelter, or even another car, but the road was empty. Emma swallowed hard. She couldn't continue driving like this. It was too dangerous. Her heart pounded as she slowed to a complete stop on the side of the road. She turned on her hazard lights and took a deep breath, but it didn't calm her nerves. The cold air inside the car felt heavier now, and the storm outside showed no sign of stopping. She reached for her phone, hoping to call for help, but there was no signal. The screen flashed, "No service," mocking her fear. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the helplessness settling in. She couldn't stay inside the freezing car forever. The temperature was dropping, and the wind was sharp enough to shake the vehicle. She knew she needed to find shelter. She wrapped her coat tightly around herself and tried to think clearly. Then, through the white haze of the storm, she noticed something: a small, dim light flickering in the distance. At first she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, but when she wiped the fog from the windshield and looked again, she saw it more clearly. A warm amber glow, faint but steady, coming from far ahead on a side path. Her heart lifted slightly. It could be a house, or a barn, or anything with a roof. Anything was better than sitting helplessly in her car. She grabbed her bag, pulled her scarf up over her nose, and stepped outside into the storm. The cold hit her instantly, stinging her cheeks and numbing her fingers even through her gloves. The wind almost pushed her back, but she forced herself forward. Every step felt heavy in the thick snow, but she kept her eyes locked on the flickering light, using it as her guide. She reminded herself over and over that she had to keep moving. Her shoes were already wet, and the cold was sinking deep into her legs. As she walked, the light grew clearer. It came from a window of a small ranch house sitting quietly against the snowy landscape. Long wooden fences surrounded the property, almost hidden under layers of snow. The place looked old but strong, built to survive rough weather. Emma's heartbeat quickened, not from fear this time, but from relief. She was getting closer. She could feel the warmth calling to her, promising safety. By the time she reached the porch, her legs were trembling so badly she could barely stay standing. Her entire body felt numb, and even her thoughts were slowing down. She knocked on the wooden door, but her frozen fingers barely made a sound. She tried again, harder this time. For a moment, she worried no one was home. She didn't have the strength to walk any farther. Just when she felt her knees weaken, the door opened. A tall man wearing a thick jacket and a cowboy hat stood in the doorway. His eyes widened when he saw her. Snow clung to her hair and coat, and her entire body was shaking uncontrollably. She tried to speak, but her teeth were chattering too hard. The man didn't waste a second. His voice was calm and warm as he said, "Come in, ma'am. You're freezing out there." Emma stepped inside, guided gently by the stranger. The moment warmth touched her skin, her body reacted with even stronger trembling. Her hands shook so much, she almost dropped her bag. The man closed the door quickly to keep the cold out. The room smelled like burning wood, and the soft glow of a fire lit the space. She tried to thank him, but she could barely form words. He looked at her with genuine concern. "You're half frozen," he said softly. "Let's get you closer to the fire." She nodded weakly. Her voice was too small, her breath too shaky. She followed him toward the large stone fireplace on the far wall, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. The warmth touched her like a lifeline, but her body was still shaking badly. The man grabbed a thick blanket from a chair and wrapped it around her shoulders with gentle care. He didn't ask too many questions. He didn't panic. He just understood that she needed help. Outside, the storm howled against the walls of the house. Inside, Emma stood near the fire, trembling but slowly feeling the first bit of hope since the storm began. She didn't know the cowboy's name yet, or what kind of person he was. All she knew was that she had found shelter at the exact moment she needed it most. And for the first time since the storm began, she felt like she might actually be safe. Emma stood near the warm fire, but her body continued shaking so hard that she could barely hold the blanket wrapped around her. Her fingers were stiff, her breaths were uneven, and her face still felt numb from the freezing wind outside. She tried to steady herself, but every muscle in her body trembled without control. The tall cowboy watched her with worry in his eyes, though he stayed calm so she wouldn't panic. The room around her felt safe. It was a simple ranch home with wooden walls, a few old pictures hanging near the doorway, and shelves filled with books, tools, and handmade decorations. A large rug covered the floor near the fire, and the soft light made the whole room glow in warm shades of orange. Outside, the storm kept roaring, but in here, the fire crackled gently, making the place feel like a small haven in the middle of winter. The cowboy stepped closer and placed a thick mug in her shaky hands. "It's warm water," he said gently. "Just sip it slowly, don't rush." His tone was calm, steady, and respectful. Emma tried to drink, but the mug rattled against her teeth, and a few drops spilled on her coat. She felt embarrassed, but he didn't react in a judgmental way. He simply reached out, steadying the cup with one hand so she wouldn't drop it. "I'm Wyatt," he said after a moment, introducing himself in a soft voice. "Don't worry, you're safe now." Emma nodded slightly, trying to speak, but her words came out shaky. "Thank you. I didn't know where else to go." Wyatt shook his head gently. Anyone would have done the same if they'd seen you out there in that storm. But Emma wasn't so sure. The way he had opened the door without hesitation, and the quiet care in his voice showed something deeper. An instinct to help. A natural kindness that wasn't found just anywhere. She tried to walk a few steps toward a nearby chair, but her legs trembled too much. Wyatt noticed immediately and moved closer, ready to steady her if she stumbled. "Take it slow," he said. "Your body's still trying to warm up." Emma hated feeling so weak. She had always tried to appear strong, independent, capable. But the cold had drained her strength so quickly that she felt fragile, almost breakable. Her voice wavered as she said, "I didn't think the weather would change so fast. My car, it slid on the road." I couldn't even see where I was going. That road gets rough during sudden storms, Wyatt replied. You weren't the first person to get stuck out there. Emma tried to take another sip from the warm mug, and though her hands shook, the heat inside the cup gave her a small sense of comfort. Wyatt pulled another blanket from a wooden chest and draped it over her shoulders. The extra weight made her feel slightly steadier. He walked to the fire and added another log, making the flames grow brighter. The warmth spread through the room quickly. When he returned to her side, he noticed the trembling in her arms and legs was still too strong. He crouched slightly so he could look her in the eyes without towering over her. Your shaking is normal, he explained softly. Almost everyone shakes like this after being in the cold too long. It's your body trying to warm itself. Emma nodded again. She knew he was right, but it didn't make the shaking any less overwhelming. Her teeth still chattered, her shoulders twitched, and she felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest. She tried to breathe deeply, but even her breaths came out uneven. Wyatt noticed. Look, he said kindly. You don't have to talk right now. The fire will help, and so will the blankets. You're doing fine. Emma appreciated his gentle approach. He didn't push her to explain anything, and he didn't make her feel weak for struggling. Instead, he created an environment where she could breathe a little easier. He pulled a wooden chair closer to the fire and motioned for her to sit. Emma tried to lower herself onto it, but as soon as she bent her knees, her legs shook violently. She lost her balance for a moment and held onto the edge of the chair. Wyatt stepped forward quickly and caught her elbow to keep her steady. Easy there, he said softly. Emma felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment, although her body was still cold. Sorry, she whispered. You don't need to apologize, he replied. Your body's been through a lot. She managed to sit, but the shaking became even more obvious. Her shoulders jerked, and the blankets moved against her with small, rapid motions. Wyatt noticed her discomfort. He removed his gloves and tossed them onto a nearby table. If you keep shaking like that, he said kindly, it'll take you a long time to warm up. She looked up at him, worried. I'm trying. I can't stop it. I know, he replied softly. Your body can't control it right now. But I can help. He walked to a cabinet near the kitchen area and returned with a kettle of warm water and a thick towel. He poured a little into a bowl, dipped the towel, wrung it out, and handed it to her carefully. Hold this in your hands. It'll help warm them faster. Emma pressed the towel between her palms. The heat soaked into her skin slowly. She closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath. That's it, Wyatt said quietly. Just breathe. You're safe here. Nothing's going to happen to you. Emma opened her eyes and watched him walk toward the window. He looked out at the storm, then pulled the curtain closed again. That storm's not letting up anytime soon, he said. Good thing you saw the lights. She nodded weakly. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't. Wyatt returned to her side, leaning lightly on the back of a chair. But you made it, he said warmly. That's what matters. Emma tried to smile, though her lips still trembled. Your house. It feels peaceful. Wyatt chuckled softly. It's old, but it keeps me warm. Emma looked around again. The place had a simple charm, filled with small things that showed Wyatt took pride in his home. Boots neatly lined near the door. A jacket hung over a wooden peg. A few handmade decorations that looked like gifts from family or friends. It felt lived in, safe, and welcoming. Suddenly, another strong tremor ran through her body, and she tightened the blanket around herself. Wyatt watched, concern deepening in his eyes. You're still shaking too much, he said. The fire alone might not be enough. Emma's breath hitched. It's getting worse. He crouched again beside her, steadying her shivering shoulder gently with his hand. You need faster warmth. I know an old ranch trick for cold shock. It's not dramatic or anything, it just helps the body warm quicker. But you need to trust me. Okay? Emma met his eyes. They were steady, calm, and kind, filled with sincerity, not anything uncomfortable. She gave a small nod, appreciating that he explained things clearly and respectfully. Okay, I trust you. Wyatt nodded back, relieved. Good. I'll help you warm up properly. You're not alone in this. Outside, the storm continued to roar. But inside the ranch house, the fire burned brighter. And Emma felt something she hadn't felt since the storm began: hope. Emma tried to steady her breathing, but her whole body continued to tremble. The blankets helped, the warm towel helped, and the fire helped, but the cold had sunk so deep inside her that her muscles refused to calm down. She felt frustrated, weak, and embarrassed, even though Wyatt showed nothing but patience toward her. Her legs shook under the blankets. Her shoulders twitched every few seconds, and her hands shivered no matter how tightly she held the warm towel. Wyatt watched her carefully, thinking about the best way to help. He had grown up on ranches his whole life. He knew how dangerous cold shock could be. He had seen people struggle like this before: ranch workers, travelers, even animals caught in sudden winter storms, and he knew the fastest, safest way to warm someone was shared body heat. Not just blankets. But he also didn't want to frighten or embarrass her. She was already vulnerable, already scared, already overwhelmed. So before doing anything, he sat down in the chair beside her and spoke in the same gentle tone he had been using from the moment she arrived. "I'm going to explain something," he began quietly, "and you can tell me if you're comfortable with it or not. Whatever you say is fine." Emma looked at him with tired eyes, still trembling. "Okay. When someone gets too cold," he continued, "the body doesn't warm up evenly. Sometimes the blankets and fire aren't enough. There's a ranch method we use it when someone's shaking too much to control anything. The idea is simple: close, steady warmth helps calm the body faster." Emma listened, breathing slowly. She trusted his calmness, his honesty. He never acted in a way that felt unsafe. His voice stayed respectful, steady, reassuring. She nodded gently. "What do I need to do?" Wyatt hesitated for a moment, wanting to be clear. "It's just sharing warmth," he said. "I sit near the fire and help keep you steady so your body warms evenly. Nothing strange or uncomfortable. Only what's needed to help you stop shaking." Emma lowered her eyes to her trembling hands. The shakes were getting stronger again. She knew she needed help. Her body wasn't responding to the blankets or hot towel as fast as it should. She took a slow breath, then gave a small, trusting nod. "If it helps, then yes." Wyatt seemed relieved, not for himself, but because he knew she was giving herself a better chance to recover. "All right," he said gently. "Let me help you." He moved the big rug closer to the fireplace, creating a warm space with the brightest heat. Then he returned to Emma and spoke softly. "Can you stand for a moment? I'll help you." Emma tried to rise, but her legs shook too hard, and she swayed. Wyatt steadied her immediately, holding her arms lightly to keep her from falling. His touch was careful, respectful, meant only to support her trembling body. "It's okay," he said. "Take your time." She managed a few steps with his help. Each movement was shaky and slow. When they reached the rug, Wyatt sat down first and positioned himself close enough for the warmth to be shared but still respectful of her space. He looked at her gently. "You can sit here," he said. "The heat from the fire and from me will help your body settle. You'll feel better soon." Emma sat slowly beside him. Even sitting, her legs shook so strongly that the blankets moved with each tremor. Wyatt wrapped one of the thick blankets around both of them, so the heat stayed trapped. Then, with careful movements, he positioned her so she was resting gently against him, not in a way that felt uncomfortable, but in a way that helped steady her shaking muscles. It was the same way he had helped ranch workers before, the same way he had comforted frightened animals during storms. It was simple, calm, human care. Emma felt awkward for a moment, but the warmth hit her almost immediately. The fire burned bright in front of her, and the warmth from Wyatt behind her formed a gentle shield against the cold. She didn't feel unsafe. She felt supported, anchored, no longer alone in her fear. Wyatt adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "Is that better?" he asked softly. She nodded slowly. Yes, it feels warmer. Good, he said. You're doing fine. Just breathe easy. Emma closed her eyes for a moment and focused on the warmth. Her hands trembled less than before. The shaking in her shoulders slowed a little. Her breathing steadied. Even though her muscles were still weak, Wyatt kept talking in quiet tones, knowing that calm conversation could help ease the shock. You must have walked a long way through that snow, he said. Most people wouldn't have made it this far. Emma let out a shaky breath. I didn't think I would. The wind was so strong, and my legs kept slipping. But you didn't give up, he said. That says a lot. She gave a faint smile, though she kept her eyes down. I was scared. Anyone would be, he replied. Fear's not weakness. It just means you're human. Emma relaxed a little more. The warmth, the steady sound of the fire, and Wyatt's calm voice slowly created a safe bubble around her. For the first time since the storm began, her trembling eased enough for her to rest her head lightly back. Wyatt noticed the change. Your shaking's slowing down, he said softly. That's a good sign. I still feel cold, but not as sharp, she whispered. It'll fade, he reassured her. Your body just needs time. You've been through a lot. The fire crackled softly. Snow tapped against the windows like small fingers. The storm outside was loud, but the room felt peaceful, wrapped in soft orange light. Emma felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief washed over her, but so did a quiet sense of vulnerability. She had always tried to handle things alone. Her struggles, her fears, her thoughts, but here she was, leaning against a stranger, trusting him with her safety, trusting him with her trembling, exhausted body, and instead of feeling ashamed, she felt something else. Comfort. She spoke quietly, her voice still weak. I'm sorry you had to help so much. Wyatt shook his head. Don't apologize. Helping someone isn't a burden. Emma breathed out slowly. You're very kind. He gave a small smile. I just do what I'd hope someone would do for me. For a while, they said nothing. The warmth slowly seeped into Emma's arms and legs. Her shaking reduced to small, occasional tremors. Her fingers loosened their tight, cold curl. Her breathing settled into a steady rhythm. Wyatt waited patiently, watching her carefully, making sure she was getting warmer. Every so often, he adjusted the blanket or moved a little closer to the fire, so she got as much heat as possible. After a long moment of silence, Emma whispered, I feel safer now. Wyatt's voice softened even more. Good. You are safe. You're not out in that storm anymore. Emma let her eyes drift closed. The exhaustion she had been fighting since the storm began started to catch up with her now that she was warm and supported. Her body felt heavy but no longer cold. Her mind felt tired but no longer terrified. Wyatt noticed her drifting and spoke quietly. If you need to rest, you can. I'll make sure you're okay. Emma nodded faintly, her head resting more comfortably. Her shaking had almost completely faded, replaced by a slow, gentle tiredness. The storm outside continued to roar. But inside the ranch house, Emma finally felt warmth, not just from the fire, but from the presence of someone who cared enough to help without hesitation. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to trust the moment. Emma rested quietly, her breathing finally steady after everything she had been through. The fire glowed brightly in front of her, and the blanket around both of them held the warmth close. The shaking that had once taken over her entire body had eased so much that only small, gentle tremors remained. Her hands no longer felt painfully stiff. Her legs still felt tired, but the sharp cold was gone. She could finally think clearly again. Wyatt remained beside her, patient and calm. He didn't rush her, didn't push conversation, didn't make her feel uncomfortable. He understood she needed time. Every few minutes he checked the fire, adding wood to keep the heat steady. The warmth made the small ranch house feel like the safest place in the world. After a long silence, Emma opened her eyes slowly. The exhaustion she felt was still heavy, but she sensed life returning to her body. She lifted her head slightly and looked toward the window. Snow still fell hard, but it looked softer from inside, like a peaceful storm rather than a dangerous one. She took a small breath and whispered, "Is it still bad out there?" Wyatt followed her gaze. "Yeah," he said quietly. "The wind's slowing down a little, but the snow's getting deeper. Roads will be blocked for a while." Emma nodded gently, feeling both relieved to be safe and worried at the same time. "I didn't mean to bring trouble to your home." Wyatt shook his head with a small smile. "You didn't bring trouble. You showed up needing help, that's all. And I'm glad you found this place before the storm got worse." Emma looked at him softly. His calmness was something she admired. "Thank you," she said slowly, her voice still quiet but steadier than before. "You didn't even know me, and you helped me without thinking twice." "That's what people are supposed to do," Wyatt replied simply. "Especially out here. The weather doesn't play around. We take care of each other." Emma absorbed those words. They comforted her in a way she hadn't expected. She had grown used to taking care of everything, alone problems, fears, decisions. Life had taught her to be independent, but it had also made her tired. Having someone step in with genuine kindness felt unusual yet deeply comforting. She adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Her muscles still felt tired, but she could sit up a little straighter now. "I feel better," she said. "Still tired, but better." Wyatt nodded. "That's good. The worst is past. But you'll need to keep warm for a while longer. Cold like that doesn't leave the body quickly." She smiled faintly. "You really know a lot about all this." "Well," he said with a soft chuckle, "I've lived through enough winters to learn what works." Emma glanced around the room again. The wooden shelves, the old photographs, the worn-out chair beside the fire, everything felt familiar, even though she had never been there before. It had an honest warmth, the kind that made her feel like she wasn't just a visitor but someone welcome. Wyatt shifted slightly, pulling another blanket from behind him and handing it to her. "Here," he said. "This one's lighter. It'll help without making you too warm." Emma took it with a grateful smile. "You think of everything. Just trying to make sure you're comfortable," he replied. Emma wrapped the new blanket around her legs and let out a slow sigh. "I don't know how long I was out in the cold," she said softly. "It felt like forever." Wyatt looked at her thoughtfully. "Long enough to scare you," he replied, "but not long enough to cause something worse. You got here just in time." She sighed again, this time with relief. "I'm really thankful I saw the light from your window." Wyatt nodded. "That light has saved a few people over the years. You're not the first to knock on this door during a storm." Emma smiled gently. "Still, you helped me more than you know." Wyatt didn't respond right away. He looked at the fire for a moment, then spoke in a quiet but honest voice. "Sometimes people show up at the right time. Maybe you needed a safe place today. Maybe I needed company. Winter storms get lonely." Emma looked at him with surprised eyes. She hadn't expected that admission. Wyatt always seemed strong, grounded, quiet but peaceful. Hearing that even he felt lonely sometimes made him feel more real, more human. "I didn't think someone like you would ever feel lonely," she said. Wyatt raised an eyebrow slightly. "Someone like me? You know," she said, searching for the right words. "Strong, calm, comfortable being alone." He chuckled lightly. "Being calm doesn't mean being lonely doesn't happen." Emma nodded slowly. "I guess you're right." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked loudly, sending sparks upward in a small dance of light. The warmth wrapped around them like a soft embrace. The storm outside felt far away. Wyatt stood up after a moment. "I'm going to make you some warm food," he said. "Something simple, just to help your body recover." Emma tried to rise as well. "I can help." "No," he said gently, holding up a hand. "You stay by the fire. You're still recovering." Emma hesitated, then nodded. She was still too tired to argue anyway. Wyatt walked into the small kitchen area. Emma watched him move around the space with natural ease. He took out a pot, filled it with water, and began preparing something warm, maybe soup or broth. His movements were quiet and steady, almost soothing to watch. She felt strangely peaceful, sitting there wrapped in blankets while the storm raged outside. The fire warmed her face, her legs, her hands. She could finally feel her fingertips again. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, but her heart felt lighter. After a few minutes, Wyatt returned with a steaming bowl of broth. "Careful," he said softly as he handed it to her. "It's hot." Emma accepted it with both hands. The warmth of the bowl seeped through her palms. She took a small sip, and the gentle flavor filled her chest with comfort. "This is perfect," she said. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He sat back down beside her, keeping enough distance to be respectful but close enough to monitor her condition. Emma felt grateful for his presence. He didn't hover. He didn't overwhelm her. He simply stayed nearby, a steady figure of safety. As she ate slowly, she spoke in a gentle voice. "I didn't plan on traveling this far today. I just needed space to think." Wyatt nodded, listening without pressuring her to continue. "I've been feeling stuck," she admitted. "Like nothing in my life is moving forward. I thought a long drive would clear my mind." "It usually helps," he said quietly. "But then the storm hit," she continued, "and everything changed so fast. I felt like I lost control of everything." "I lost control of everything." Wyatt looked at her carefully. "But you didn't give up," he said, "and you didn't lose control. You made smart choices. You stopped the car. You looked for shelter. You pushed through the cold. That's strength." Emma blinked, surprised by his words. "I never thought of it that way." "Well," he said softly, "sometimes we don't see our own strength until someone else points it out." Emma set the empty bowl aside. Her heart felt a little fuller. His words warmed her in a different way. Quiet reassurance. Gentle understanding. Simple truth. The fire continued to burn strongly. The storm outside didn't seem as frightening as before. And Emma felt, for the first time in a long while, that she wasn't entirely alone. "You've been very kind to me," she said softly. Wyatt looked at her with a calm smile. "And I'm not done helping yet. You're staying here until that storm passes." Emma nodded, feeling gratitude rise inside her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know how long the storm would last. But for tonight, she felt safe. And that was enough. The morning light slowly entered through the large wooden windows of the ranch house, painting the room with soft yellow lines. Emma opened her eyes slowly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. All she felt was comfort, safety, and a calm silence that wrapped around her like a gentle blanket. Then she heard the faint sound of someone moving dishes in the kitchen, and the smell of something warm and buttery drifted toward her. That was when she remembered everything: the storm, the freezing cold, her shaking hands, the fire, and Wyatt's quiet, steady presence. She pushed the blanket away and sat up carefully. Her body felt much lighter, and the trembling that had controlled her the previous night was completely gone. She breathed out slowly, appreciating the calm inside her chest. The fire from last night was barely glowing now, only a few soft orange embers left. Still, the room held a gentle warmth. Emma stood and looked around. The ranch living room had a charm of its own: simple furniture, wooden shelves filled with old books, and photos of horses and wide-open fields. Everything looked lived in and peaceful. She walked toward the kitchen, following the sound of someone lightly humming. Wyatt stood at the stove wearing a flannel shirt, his sleeves rolled up. He was pouring batter into a pan to make pancakes, moving with quiet confidence like he had done this 1,000 times. When he heard her footsteps, he turned slightly and gave her a small smile. "Well, good morning," he said. "You look a whole lot better than you did last night." Emma smiled shyly. "I feel better. Thank you for everything." "You're welcome," he replied, turning the pancake. "Have a seat. Breakfast is almost ready." She sat at the wooden table that was positioned near a window. Outside, the world looked completely different. The storm had passed, leaving the land covered in a sparkling layer of white snow. The sky was bright and clear, a soft blue that made the whole scene look peaceful, almost magical. She couldn't believe that only hours ago, the wind had been roaring and shaking the world outside. Wyatt brought 2 plates to the table, pancakes, a little honey, and scrambled eggs. It was simple food, but it smelled wonderful. "I figured you might need something warm before you head back," he said as he sat across from her. Emma looked up quickly. "Head back? The roads are still dangerous, aren't they?" "Not as bad as last night," he replied. "But I won't let you leave until I check the road myself. Safety first." His calm tone comforted her again. It was strange she had known him for less than a day, yet she felt like she had known him longer. Something about his steady voice and gentle concern made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in months. They began eating, and Emma felt the warmth spread through her body. Wyatt didn't ask her many questions, but the conversation flowed naturally. They talked about simple things, the weather, ranch life, and the horses in the stable. Though the topics were ordinary, Emma felt a peacefulness in the quiet conversation that she had missed for a long time. When they finished breakfast, Wyatt stood up to get a map. "I want to show you a better route for your drive," he said, spreading the map on the table. "There are a few roads that get icy faster than the others. You'll want to avoid those." "Open." Emma leaned closer as he pointed to the different paths with his finger. He explained each one with clear directions, making sure she understood. She appreciated how patient he was, taking his time instead of rushing through it. After he folded the map, he disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a silver thermos. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "It's hot tea. It will stay warm for hours, just in case the cold starts bothering you again." Emma took it with both hands. A simple object, yet the gesture touched her deeply. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to do all this." Wyatt shook his head. Anyone would have done the same, but Emma knew that wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would have opened their door to a stranger in the middle of a storm. Not everyone would have stayed awake by the fire, making sure she was okay. Not everyone would have drawn her a map or prepared breakfast with quiet care. His kindness wasn't ordinary. She walked to the door and began putting on her coat and gloves. Wyatt followed, carrying her bag, which he had dried the night before because it had been soaked from the snow. When she zipped her coat, Wyatt stepped outside first and looked toward the road. "It's still icy in the shaded areas," he said. "Drive slow, and don't push the car too hard." Emma nodded. "I will." They walked to her car together. The snow on the windshield had already melted, where Wyatt had brushed it off earlier. Before she opened the door, she turned to look at him. "I don't know how to thank you enough," she said. "Last night was terrifying. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't seen the light from your ranch." Wyatt shrugged gently. "Life sends people to us at the right time sometimes. I'm glad you made it here." His words stayed in her heart like a small flame. She opened the door and placed the thermos on the passenger seat. When she turned back again, she noticed something in his eyes. Something calm. Something steady. Something warm. A part of her wanted to stay just a little longer. But she knew the road called her. "I hope. Maybe I'll see you again someday," she said. Unsure, but sincere. "You're welcome here anytime," he replied simply. Emma smiled, a real smile, the kind she hadn't felt in weeks. She climbed into the car and started the engine. Wyatt stepped back, watching as she prepared to leave. She rolled down the window a little. "Goodbye, Wyatt," she said. "Take care, Emma." She slowly drove away, careful on the snowy path. As she moved down the road, she looked at the rearview mirror. Wyatt was still standing there near his porch, a calm figure against the bright morning snow. The ranch behind him looked small from the distance, yet strangely comforting. As she continued driving, she felt something shift inside her, something quiet yet powerful. Last night had been more than a storm for her. It had shown her that even in the coldest, darkest moments, kindness could appear when least expected. She had walked to that ranch trembling and afraid, but she was leaving with a rested heart and a clearer mind. The snow-covered world around her looked brighter than before. The road ahead didn't feel so lonely now. She touched the warm thermos beside her and smiled again. Wyatt's kindness would stay with her long after the snow melted. Emma drove on, taking the safe path he had drawn for her, feeling stronger with every mile. And though the ranch slowly disappeared behind her, the memory of that night, the fire, the warmth, and the small acts of care would stay with her forever, reminding her that even one gentle stranger could change the direction of a cold, difficult journey.